in breaking through the Gurn lines around Earth, and then, with the addition of the Earth ships, we can easily capture all the Gurn ships in the solar system."
"Easily?"
Narth made a contemptuous sneer of the word.
"Were you actually so stupid as to think that you biological freaks could equal Gurn officers who have made a career of space warfare?"
"We'll far exceed them," he said. "A space battle is one of trying to keep your blaster beams long enough on one area of the enemy ship to break through its blaster shields at that point, and at the same time try to move and dodge fast enough to keep the enemy from doing the same thing to you. The ships are capable of accelerations up to 50 gravities or more, but the acceleration limiter is the safeguard that prevents the ship from going into such a high degree of acceleration or into such a sudden change of direction that it would kill the crew. We from Ragnarok are accustomed to 1.5 gravity, and can withstand much higher degrees of acceleration than Gurns or any other race from a one-gravity world. To enable us to take advantage of that fact, we have had the acceleration limiter on this cruiser disconnected."
"Disconnected?"
Narth's contemptuous regard vanished in frantic consternation.
"You fool, you don't know what that means. You'll move the acceleration lever too far and kill us all."
The red dot flicked on the view screen, trembled, and was suddenly a gigantic battleship in full view. He touched the acceleration control, and Narth's next words were cut off as his diaphragm sagged. He swung the cruiser in a curve, and Narth was slammed sideways, the straps cutting into him and the flesh of his face pulled lopsided by the gravity. His eyes, bulging, went blank with unconsciousness. The powerful blasters of the battleship blossomed like a row of pale blue flowers, concentrating on the stern of the cruiser. A warning siren screeched as they started breaking through the cruiser's shields. He dropped the detector screen that would shield the cruiser from sight, but not from the blaster beams, and tightened the curve until the gravity dragged heavily at his own body. The warning siren stopped as the blaster beams of the battleship went harmlessly into space, continuing to follow the probability course plotted from the cruiser's last visible position and the course by the battleship's robot target tracers. He lifted the detector screen to find the battleship almost exactly where the cruiser's course analyzers had predicted it would be. The blasters of the battleship were blazing their full concentration of firepower into an area behind and to one side of the cruiser. They blinked out at sight of the cruiser in its new position, and blazed again a moment later, boring into the stern. He dropped the detector screen and swung the cruiser in another curve, spiraling in the opposite direction. As before, the screech of the alarm siren died as the battleship's blasters followed the course given them by the course analyzers, and target tracers that were built to presume that all enemy ships were acceleration limiter equipped. The cruiser could have destroyed the battleship at any time, but they wanted to capture their flagship unharmed. The maneuvering continued, the cruiser drawing closer to the battleship. The battleship, in desperation, began using the same hide-and-jump tactics the cruiser used, but it was of little avail. The battleship moved at known acceleration limits, and the cruiser's course analyzers predicted each new position with sufficient accuracy. The cruiser made its final dash in a tightening spiral, its detector screen flickering on and off. It struck the battleship at a matched speed, with a thump and ringing of metal as the magnetic grapples fastened the cruiser like a leech to the battleship's side. In that position, neither the forward nor stern blasters of the battleship could touch it. There remained only to convince the commander of the battleship that further resistance was futile. This he did with a simple ultimatum to the commander. "This cruiser is firmly attached to your ship, its acceleration limiter disconnected. Its drives are of such sufficient power to thrust both ships forward at much higher degree of acceleration than persons from one-gravity worlds can endure. You will surrender at once, or we shall be forced to put these two ships into a curve of such short radius and at an acceleration so great that all of you will be killed." Then he added, "If you surrender, we'll do somewhat better by you than you did with the humans 200 years ago. We'll take all of you on to Athena." The commander, already sick from acceleration that would have been negligible to Ragnarok men, had no choice. His reply came, choked with acceleration sickness and the greater sickness of defeat.
"We will surrender."
Narth regained consciousness. He saw Humboldt sitting beside him as before, with no Gurn rescuers crowding into the control room with shouted commands and drawn blasters.
"Where are they?" he asked. "Where is the battleship?"
"We captured it," he said.
"You captured a Gurn battleship?"
"It wasn't hard," he said. "It would have been easier if only Ragnarok men had been on the cruiser. We didn't want to accelerate to any higher gravities than absolutely necessary because of the Gurns on it."
"You did it. You captured the battleship,"
Narth said, his tone like one dazed. He wet his lips, staring, as he contemplated the unpleasant implications of it.
"You're freak mutants who can capture a battleship. Maybe you will take Athena and Earth from us, but—"
the animation of hatred returned to his face.
"What good will it do you? Did you ever think about that?"
"Yes," he said. "We've thought about it."
"Have you?"
Narth leaned forward, his face shining with the malice of his gloating.
"You can never escape the consequences of what you have done. The Gurn Empire has the resources of dozens of worlds. The Empire will build a fleet of special ships, a force against which your own will be nothing, and send them to Earth and Athena and Ragnarok. The Empire will smash you for what you have done, and if there are any survivors of your race left, they will cringe before Gurns for 100 generations to come. Remember that while you're posturing in your little hour of glory on Athena and Earth."
"You insist in thinking we'll do as Gurns would do," he said. "We won't delay to do any posturing. We'll have a large fleet when we leave Earth, and we'll go at once to engage the Gurn home fleet. I thought you knew we were going to do that. We're going to cripple and capture your fleet, and then we're going to destroy your empire."
"Destroy the Empire? Now?"
Narth stared again. All the gloating was gone as he saw, at last, the quick and inexorable end.
"Now, before we can stop you? Before we can have a chance?"
When a race has been condemned to die by another race, and it fights and struggles and manages somehow to survive, it learns a lesson. It learns it must never again let the other race be in position to destroy it. So, this is the harvest you reap from the seeds you sowed on Ragnarok 200 years ago. "You understand, don't you?" he asked, almost gently. "For 200 years, the Gurn Empire has been a menace to our survival as a race. Now the time has come when we shall remove it." He stood in the control room of the battleship and watched Athena's sun in the view-screen, blazing like a white flame. Segan, fully recovered, was stretched out on the floor near him, twitching and snarling a little in her sleep as she fought again the battle with the Gurns. Fenrir was pacing the floor, swinging his black, massive head restlessly, while Tip and Freckles were examining with fascinated curiosity the collection of bright metals that had been cleaned out of the Gurn commander's desk. Lake and Craig left their stations, as impatient as Fenrir, and came over to watch the view-screen with him. "One day more," Craig said. "We're 200 years late, but we're coming into the world that was to have been our home." "It can never be now," he said. "Have any of us ever thought of that? That we're different to humans, and there's no human world we could ever call home?" "I've thought of it," Lake said. "Ragnarok, made us different.